What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the Grandmaster hero pick rate so that you know what characters are really good right now, you know what characters are dominant, and what you should be playing and practicing right now. Real quick, the only way that we can continue to make guides is by going to the GameLeap website and supporting this channel. Plus, you'll get access to in-depth tips and tricks that you won't find anywhere else. Go check it out right now down below. Thank you so much. So let's jump right into it, kicking it off with none other than the supports, actually. And we're going to be talking about the character that has the highest pick rate by far, and it's none other than Baptiste. Now, Baptiste is really enabling a lot of different strategies right now. He's enabling Brawl. He's incredibly impactful, especially for ranked play. And there's a few tips I got to give you on Baptiste if you want to master this character. The first thing is your immortality use. There's actually several things that you need to consider. One, enemy LOS to your immortality, because if it's just out in the open, it's going to be very easy for enemies to destroy it. So using it around natural cover is going to help a lot. And against different types of DPS and other characters, you really need to take note of what do they have to destroy it and how do they have to destroy it. For example, a hit scan is going to have a lot easier job than maybe something like a Doomfist. So that's something that you should keep in mind and you should just take note of. Now, the second thing you need to think of is the sandbagging nature of immortality field. When enemies come in and they try to use all the resources to try to burst down like a tank, for instance, using immortality field at the last possible moment means that it's that much harder for them to burst down. They used all their abilities, they used all of their focus, they overextended, and the immortality field keeps them alive long enough to potentially turn the tables. And that's something that's going to take a little bit of practice because it's a fine line there where if you use it too late, your teammates die, but if you use it too early, you're not getting maximum value out of it. And we're going to the next support we got to talk about is Ana. Ana's still completely fantastic, and I've been playing Ana a little bit, actually playing a little bit more Overwatch recently. Ana feels great still. You have a ton of impact in ranked, and for the majority of ranks, Ana, in my opinion, has the highest solo carry potential. Now, one of the things that I see that a lot of Ana players lack is that aggressive mindset or that aggressive pivot mindset, where they really try to interweave situations where they are actually outputting damage and value. One thing that you could do a lot is just put a little bit of damage here or there in between healing enemies with your scope, shooting enemy echoes, putting a little bit of damage on DPS that are on the high ground. This really can help a lot of your other DPS players do their job a little bit better. That damage adds up, and while you don't necessarily need to be getting a lot of kills, putting a little bit more pressure and helping your DPS here or there in between your primary job is definitely going to go a long way into, you know, winning more games and allowing you to help your even worse DPS actually be able to challenge much better enemy DPS. Now, the last two supports that I wanted to talk about is Mercy and Lucio. About the same pick rate. Mercy is very good at enabling a lot of strategy. She's good at pocketing. She's good with mobility. She's good with characters like Wrecking Ball and Winston and Diva. And the big mistake that I really wanted to talk about as far as Mercy players are concerned is when to commit to a res, because that can really differentiate a decent Mercy between like a god tier Mercy, is when they decide to res. Sometimes it's worth it and you have to go for that res that basically has a giant percentage chance of failure, right? Every time you go for a res, there's no guarantee that you're gonna die or live. There's no guarantee that you're gonna get it off or not get it off, because sometimes it depends on whether or not the enemy is hitting their shots. They could whiff, things could happen, and you really need to decide, is a fight winnable or is it lost? Sometimes it's far better for you to not go for that res, because remember, you make yourself uniquely vulnerable, and if you die, then the fight is basically just straight up over. However, sometimes it's worth that risk, because if you can get that res off, if it does go through, even if there's only like a 40% chance of success, that could be the way that you actually turn the fight back in your favor and win the fight. But you got to make that call, and can you win the fight without going for this res? Because if it doesn't work out, you're assured to lose it. So that's a very interesting decision-making point that you have to think about when playing Mercy, but it is definitely incredibly important. And then, of course, Lucio works really well with that Brawl playstyle, with Baptiste, with Rhine, with Zarya, and yeah, Lucio's still fantastic, still great. You could be a little bit aggressive with him. You can make boop plays, booping enemy tanks and displacing them, or of course you could just be that constant source of speed boost for your team. A lot to love about Lucio right now. Now, let's talk real quickly about the tanks. The number one tank being played played right now in Grandmaster is actually Sigma. Now, that being said, Sigma is a much harder character to play than some of the other tanks that get value. Reinhardt is close behind him. Diva is behind that. Wrecking Ball. All those characters are going to be quite a bit easier to get the max value out of than Sigma, with maybe the exception being Diva. Now, Sigma is an amazing character to play with a DPS like McCree. He's very good with a character like Ryan, and in my personal opinion, he's one of those characters that if you master, you have a lot of carry potential on the character, which is something that in some tanks, you feel like you need a certain amount of extra support, right? If you are a Reinhardt, for instance, and you got no good healers and you got DPS that are off doing their own thing, sometimes you feel completely useless, but Sigma, you have a lot of impact as long as you learn how to kite, space properly, and you really try to connect with as many big ultimates as possible. Now, of course, Reinhardt is fantastic, but something that I really can't stress enough is active communication between Ryan and Baptiste. Not only do you want to start that Fire Strike combo with Amplification Matrix, because it could just win you an entire team fight, but the Immortality Field is really going to help you maximize your swings or get out more potential swings, because you know when you can be a little bit more aggressive when that Immortality Field is coming down, and it's going to make it so you're building up more ultimate charge, which is going to help you win that Ryan v Ryan mirror and pressure the enemy Ryan a lot more. So definitely very important to communicate between these two characters. Now, Diva is actually a fantastic pick right now, and she has a lot of characters that she has a legit amount of game against. She's pretty decent against Ana. She can eat value nades, and it's something that you should definitely be looking out for, especially if the enemy Ana is in an aggressive position. She can catch other players off guard. If they're isolated, she can definitely go and try to burst them down. She's really good at potentially shutting down McCree's, peeling her supports if a Tracer's on them, or even a Wrecking Ball. When a Wrecking Ball slams, she definitely wants to DM that because they're kind of sitting CC targets. But Diva's a character that is going to be pretty difficult to learn, but I definitely think she's worth learning. She's very powerful. And then Orisa and Wrecking Ball are basically tied for the next tank spot. I think that Wrecking Ball is going to be that character that, especially if you are good at using Wrecking Ball, you're comfortable. There's a lot of maps where you're just going to be an absolute menace, and against some team compositions, they just can't deal with you. But the number one tip I would give you on Wrecking Ball is just practice your aim. I know that this seems kind of elementary, but you cannot just get away with playing Wrecking Ball and not being able to aim. I know that you might think that you can, but really, that might be the difference between you bursting down that support and letting them go and get peeled. So you really need to make sure that you're practicing your tracking on Wrecking Ball if you want to get maximum impact on the character, and it's going to hold you back if you just don't have good aim. And then Orisa, of course, is going to be a character that you can play depending on your composition. You're not really going to want to be playing Orisa if you have a whole bunch of divers and things like that, but you can definitely work if you have the right support lineup, like a Baptiste, and maybe you have like a really good character that can utilize your shield like McCree. Then Orisa might be a good pick here or there, but I definitely think that there are more fun ways to climb. That's just a personal opinion. Yeah, play what you want. Now, real quickly, I can't stress enough that the majority of tanks are playable. Winston and Zarya are still very good, have decently high pick rates. Roadhog is probably the least playable, and I think that once you get to a certain level with a lot of honors floating around, you're not really going to want to play Roadhog all that much, but if you're a god with hooks, you're a god with freaking hooks. Now, moving on to the DPS, we do got to talk about the top 5 DPS. Tracer at number 1, McCree at number 2, Echo at number 3, Ashe at number 4, and Hanzo at number 5. These are all great characters in any freaking combination. Every single one of these can get value, but they get value in different ways, and they pair better with certain types of characters. Think about how the DPS line up with the characters we just listed. So let's think about Tracer, for instance. Doesn't really pair that well with Baptiste. He's going to have a hard time healing her. That being said, she's going to pair pretty decent with Mercy, because Mercy pairs good with Dive. She's going to be pretty decent with Ana as well, and Lucio can dive in with her. She's going to be a lot better with characters like Wrecking Ball and Diva, rather than characters like Ryan and Sigma. Now we go on to McCree. McCree's gonna pair fantastic with Baptiste, still decent with Ana, actually pretty good with Mercy, great with Sigma, great with Ryan, pretty good with Diva, not so great with Wrecking Ball. I mean, you can really see a common theme. If they kind of enable each other, that's what you should be thinking about. Now, I'm not saying that you can't play Tracer. When your team are playing Baptiste and Ryan and Sigma, you just gotta understand that the way you play needs to change. You are not gonna be able to get resources, dive resources, resources, heal resources from across the map when you are playing Tracer with that kind of composition. So you have to play her fundamentally different. You have to play her more self-sufficient. You have to play her around health packs, and that's how you need to try to get value. If you're playing McCree with a lot of dive characters, you need to be using natural cover a lot more, trying to find value off angles. You can't just be going in and playing that front line. So that's really what you need to learn how to do on a DPS. You either need to, one, be flexible to the tools you have on your composition that support that tank, or you need to adapt your play to be slightly different depending on the tools that you have in your composition. And that's true for Tracer, Echo, McCree, Ashe, and Hanzo. All these are viable, and many others are just under the surface that you could definitely use. Torb, Soldier, Widowmaker, Pharah, Reaper. There's a lot of characters that you can definitely make work, especially if we're talking about the lower ranks. But I do think that either adapting or fitting your team composition is the most important thing about this meta right now. But if you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments down below, and go to the GameLeap website in the links down below for advanced guides, concepts, tips, and tricks. We got it all on the GameLeap website. You got to go check it out right now. But thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video. Love your faces. See you next time.